Welcome back to Breezy the Teacher's YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in again. Today we are going to talk all things sequence writing. Have you ever heard of the word sequence? Say it with me. Sequence. It's a word that has 2 syllables and it means that you're going to be putting something in order. So today we're going to be writing and putting a story in order from what happens first, what happens next, what happens then or after, and what happens finally. Okay, so I want you to think about a story first. Have you ever heard of the story of the 3 little pigs? Yes, you have. Amazing. So I want you to think of that story, the 3 little pigs. What happened first in that story? Did the wolf blow the house down? No, the wolf didn't blow the house down first. That was one of the last things that happened in that story. So I want you to think when you put a story in sequential order that you are making the story make sense. Let's go ahead. That we're going to be using in order to make our sequence writing make sense today. If you see at the very top, it says sequence writing. The definition of sequence writing is putting things in order, but not only putting things in order, it's the order of the events in the story. So remember the 3 little pigs that I was just talking about. If we had already known that the wolf blew down the house, why would we even read the rest of the story? We probably wouldn't because we would already know the conclusion. If we said the story backwards, would it make any sense? Absolutely not. So making sure that you put the story in order with the events of how they happened in the story is so important. Here are 4 main words that we will be using, but I also want to go in with some clue words. Here is the first, next, then, and finally. Right here to these 4 boxes. We just went over these 4 words. First, next, then, and finally. Where do you think we would put the first event that happens in a story? Would we put it in box number 1, 2, 3, or 4? Show me with those fingers. Awesome. Yes, we would put it in the first box. How about this word, then? Would we put that in the first box, second box, third, or fourth? Oh, that's a tricky one. I see some fingers with 2 and some fingers with 3. And you're right. We can put then in the second box or the third box. But what about this word, finally? Would we choose to use the word finally in the first box? Absolutely not. We would use finally at the very end. If you see, we have 3 boxes down here as well. This is where you can tell the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. So you can choose what type of sequential order you would like to use. You can use words like first, next, then, and finally, or you can also put your story in order with what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened in the end. But guess what? We have so many more words that we can use. Let's check them out. Here are our clue words, and I'm going to take a seat for this one because they're so important. Our clue words to make sure that we know that our story is making sense and is in order. Here are some other clue words that we can use. First, next, then, and finally. You already knew that. Here's another one. Before and after. Those make sense. You must know what happens before and you must know what happens after an event. So just think of this detail. Before I leave the house in the morning, I put on my socks and my shoes. After I put on my socks and shoes, I'm able to leave the house to go to school. Do you see how that makes sense? Let's check out another one. After I brush my teeth, I put toothpaste in my mouth. Miss Brianna, that doesn't even make any sense. You see how we must know which word we need to use first, and then we need to figure out which word we use after that. Okay, here are some other clue words in the second column. At last, afterward, eventually, meanwhile, and the next day. I want to draw your attention to this last one, the next day. Have you ever heard of some time words like noon or morning, afternoon, late at night? These are also words that you can use in order to put your story in the order of the events that they happen. Are you ready to give this a try? Yes, let's go ahead. We're going to be writing a short story about a time that we took a trip to the zoo. I want you to think about a time that you went to the zoo. What animals did you see? What did you do first when you walked in? What did you do after that? Did you grab lunch? Did you go on the train? Let's take a look and put our events in sequential order. Now with this part, we are going to be using black for our main text, and then we're going to be using a beautiful red for our sequential words. So I heard from a few of you out there about your trips to the zoo, so I want to incorporate all of that information into our short story. So what I saw on some of your writings is the first time you ever went to the zoo, or talking about a time where you did go to the zoo, the first thing that you did was go and feed the giraffes. So let's think. How can we put that in a sentence using one of our sequence words? When I arrived to the zoo, the first, second, third, finally, afterward? Oh, the first, yes. The first thing I did was feed the giraffes. Wonderful. Let's look at what happened next. On some of your trips to the zoo, I saw that you got a little hungry, so you went and grabbed a snack. So the next thing, can we use that word next? Yes, we sure can. The next thing we're going to talk about is how we got a little hungry and we went to go get a snack. So how about we use the word after? Because it's after we went to go visit the giraffes. After visiting the giraffes, I got hungry and grabbed lunch. Let's think, where could we go and travel to next at the zoo? Let's rethink our writing before we go on. It says, when I arrived to the zoo, the first thing I did was feed the giraffes. After visiting the giraffes, I got hungry and grabbed lunch. Then the elephants were putting on a show. So I stopped to watch. And let's talk about the last thing that we did. We went and visited the beautiful butterfly garden. So let's take a look. When I arrived to the zoo, the first thing I did was feed the giraffes. After visiting the giraffes, I got hungry and grabbed lunch. Then the elephants were putting on a show, so I stopped to watch. The last thing I did was visit the butterfly garden. And I also think it's really good to tell how you felt about this trip. So how did we feel? I think that we felt fantastic about it. So the last thing I did was visit the butterfly garden. My trip to the zoo was amazing. All right, let's see if our story makes sense. My trip to the zoo, sequence writing. When I arrived to the zoo, the first thing I did was feed the giraffes. After visiting the giraffes, I got hungry and grabbed lunch. Then the elephants were putting on a show, so I stopped to watch. The last thing I did was visit the butterfly garden. My trip to the zoo was amazing. Excellent job helping me out today. I just wanted to make sure that you know how to use those sequence words whenever you are writing. On this next story, I want to see what you did the last time you went trick-or-treating. I'm so looking forward to your sequence writing for your trick-or-treating during Halloween last year. As always, thank you for tuning in to Breezy the Teacher's YouTube page. I hope you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button and I will see you next time.